Malcolm Hoenlein's with us. We call this the Weekly Update, Conference of Presidents of Major American Jewish Organizations. Mr. Hoenlein, welcome back to JM in the AM.
Thank you. It's good to be with you as always.
I'm sure you also are encouraging people to enjoy the great weather and come out to Fifth Avenue on Sunday.
I'm encouraging them to take advantage of those things as extra benefits, but it is not just, I think, a choice. I think it's an essential that people go and make their voices heard and by their physical presence, answer those who aren't there, which is the best repudiation of the anti-Israel, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic elements. And I think it probably never was more essential than this year to be there in the streets, and Jews and non-Jews alike should be standing up for Israel at this time. It's of such paramount importance. I don't even think it should be necessary to have to explain to people why they should be there, and should line the streets, and everybody should marching, all of the officials who come and others. There's a large delegation of the Knesset. I met with them yesterday. There are 13 members together with the Speaker of the Knesset. Many others are coming, the Mayor of Jerusalem. It's a chance to show them and send back the message to the people of Israel that they're not alone, that we stand with them. It's a message to the haters that we don't cower in the face of this, of their decisions, whether to attend or not. And I don't think we should focus on those who don't come. We should focus on those who do.
I'm laughing only because that's my next question. But I'm just curious, and I know we shouldn't focus on it, but I'm just curious. Look, you've been on the scene for, all these decades, and obviously the parade is, 55, 60 years old. Do you remember anything close to this in terms of the public pushback, a government official like the mayor of the city of New York, or, I don't know, do you remember anything that resembles what this era of support for Israel is going through?
That's a good question. I don't think, we've had difficult times. We've had campaigns against Israel. We've had bouts of anti-Semitism, but nothing is consistent. This is not just haphazard. You know that I've talked about it for decades on this show, warning about this because we saw it in development. We saw it building up. And I think that the nature of the anti-Semitism we face, all that we predicted about, and to see the systemic arrangement, that this is well organized. This is a long-term plan on the part of the haters. They are poisoning the generation, the next generation, let alone impacting current people. That the impact is one that we can't even anticipate, because once this poison in the system, you can't just extract it. When people talk about denazification after the war, it doesn't just happen. Even though they made very extreme efforts, it takes a long time. And the poison still remains in the system. You still see the manifestations in Germany, and certainly here. But when they talk about, we got to de-radicalize Hamas and Hezbollah people, that doesn't happen just like that. People, take a course or take a pill, and it changes them. So what we're seeing in our campuses, and what we're seeing all over the country and in virtually every sector, is something that is going to be with us for a long time. And the answer is that you have to fight back. We have to stand up, speak out, make the case, not defensively, but offensively, and do it with real credibility and conviction. It's so important. We will, and we have discussed this for so many years. When 20 years ago we talked about some of the Muslim and the populations, and then couldn't have anticipated the open borders and how fast that this would continue. But look at the patterns in Europe, and that ultimately it comes here.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the only positive, I shouldn't say only, but one of the positives is seeing how people react to it. There's no question that people, and not just the police commissioner of New York, but many others, they use opportunities now to make strong statements that are pro-Israel. People who never, ever would have spoken up on the issue whatsoever, who feel that Israel is being treated unfairly, are now voicing their opinion. So the only benefit, and again, I know it's not only, but one of the benefits, it's woken up a lot of people around this country.
It's woken up some. It's intimidated others. And if our young people were more educated, at least that they can answer with confidence. They can't because they don't know themselves. So we have to look at massive educational programs, just as we look at security issues. We have to invest in it. We have to get people to root out those that are just creating organizations that don't do anything, or they can have big mouths but not deliver. And I want to credit both for the rally that they convened in front of Gracie Mansion, bringing the message home. And it doesn't, even though it wasn't, a massive number of people, it was enough to be able to get on the media,
right,
and to create a positive impression.
Right. It looked significant, right?
It looked, right, and it was significant in terms of its impact,
right,
and that we have, and where we see manifestations of anti-Semitism, people rallying. If there's a store that's being boycotted, the fact that hundreds of people come in front of it is enough just to say, we stand with them, we're buying their stuff, we're going to counter the haters.
Yeah, no question about it. All right. In the moving on now to some international issues, in the immortal words of, when it comes to Iran, in the immortal words of Howie Mandel, deal or no deal? Malcolm, is there any way to determine if we're on our way to an actual agreement between the U.S. and Iran?
He would never have had a show if it was dependent on a decision like this one.
That's for sure. A never-ending saga.
It would have been the boringest show in the world, because every week you'd have the same contestant and you'd have them all
correct,
yes or no, and
correct,
not deciding. Look, I don't know, because I don't think anybody really knows now. The information that comes out is often contradictory, and clearly it rests with the president. We've heard strong statements from the head of CENTCOM, the Central Command, which includes Israel in the Middle East, and they have been very forthright, very courageous. They initiated the attacks at night over the last few days and evenings against Iranian targets and against the island, against ships, against others, quote, violating the standing agreements and posing a threat. But at the same time, the negotiations are going on. We keep being told that they're very close to an agreement. There's almost an agreement. There is an agreement, but we don't know it. That the idea of a 60 or 90-day hiatus is frankly inexplicable to me. I don't know how you make that work. And if you look at the calendar, 60 or 90 days in Israel brings you closer to the election there, but here also it brings you closer to the midterms within striking distance of them, and to have the president can say that he's not driven by the midterms, which may or may not be the case, but also the price of oil may or may not be the case, but it's very hard to believe that they're going to want to be a month out of the election and have oil be at such a high price, and that the war continuing. They need 2 weeks to finish the job right now, they say, the CENTCOM and Israel together, to take out the remaining sites, to also rejigger the discussion, because right now the emphasis on removing the, quote, dust doesn't do it. The dust can be replaced, meaning the enriched uranium, enriched to 60% and more. They also have a ton that is enriched to 3%. That can be quickly, because they have the infrastructure, because they have the R6s, the centrifuges, that stuff, a lot of it remains intact. They have 70% of their ballistic missiles. Much of the production and other things were damaged and were hit, but they can be reconstructed. You see also their ability to produce drones. And all over the Middle East, we see the impact of the drones, and unfortunately very negatively in the north in Israel in the last couple of days. And so, but we don't see the talk about conditioning and an agreement on stopping the support for the terrorist entities, Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, etc. We don't hear talk about the ballistic missile component, which was when Prime Minister Netanyahu laid it out. It was the nuclear and the ballistic missile, because we saw what damage that did to Israel, to our other allies in the Gulf, our Arab allies. And there are other conditions also that we had that we would have placed, ending the executions, which, by the way, are continuing virtually every day. Right. The persecution of the people, and regime change, which can't be imposed. And, probably if it happens by historic precedent, it happens after the conflict. But we can't go into this and think that a 60-day quote, period of negotiations only gives them the time to reposition themselves. It will send a message to our Gulf allies who are now making their own deals with Iran because they don't have faith and trust in the outcome of this, and they continue to hit them, by the way. And you saw what they did just this week, attacking American base and shooting missiles. And there was some retaliation by Saudi Arabia, by UAE. We learned during the war, but I think right now they would be very hesitant to get involved. The USS Ford is out. You can't keep such a large contingent of forces there indefinitely, and months more is difficult. And if you're going to have a 90-day period or a 60-day period, that means you're extending them 2 more months before a decision is made about what follows up.
Right, but is it possible, from the U.S. standpoint, is it possible that it is easier for the President of the United States to save face with a ceasefire as opposed to a written agreement?
Look, ultimately, whatever they sign is meaningless. And they've never abided by an agreement. They didn't abide by the JCPOA. We're told it now like it was a panacea, that it was, this breakthrough agreement. The fact is that they were violating it all along. And they didn't allow the inspections that they were supposed to allow. They did enrich the uranium during that period. So whether they sign or not is probably meaningless. And we're not going to see whether Mushtaba, who they still haven't established that he's alive or not alive, is really in control, and that is whoever signs it is really authorized to do so.
Right, but
when it comes to them, the signing of an agreement is right. Secondary.
But the ceasefire gives the president 2 opportunities. Number one, he could always say he never signed an agreement with Iran. That's number one. And number two, as we've seen with Russia and Ukraine, and we've seen with so many other situations, he will go ahead and implement something and then forget about it. Like, he'll do a 60-day ceasefire agreement right now, and then, no matter how many months or years from now, he may never revisit the issue. That seems to be his MO. So that's why I say that I think the ceasefire may just be his best way out.
Yeah, but we were never the leaders in the war with Ukraine, and there was always a hesitancy to get involved, whether right or wrong. Many people just debated, and the Europeans. He was shifting the onus to the Europeans, who should be bearing more of the responsibility. So it's not really comparable in terms of our involvement and the position that the president staked out. I know that there are internal pressures, certainly, to end the war and to not to have more casualties, God forbid, and not to have, the price of oil continue, the economic impact, the feeling that, in another couple of weeks, the global impact economically will be much more severe. All of these are realities that they have to deal with. And but the president has pulled out surprises before. It could well be that he wants to show the world that he gave them all the rope that he could, and they just hung themselves with it.
But he never seems to put a lid on it. Even with Russia and Ukraine, he gets involved, Putin visits, the whole thing, and then at some point it just, he takes it all, he takes it completely out of the news. Like right now, nobody thinks the U.S. has any role whatsoever in intervening in that conflict, and he ran on ending that conflict.
But we still have a role both in how we treat some of the Baltic states, how we deal with other threats posed by him, the economic sanctions on Russia, the there are a lot of considerations. And here in terms of Iran, the U.S. role is far more prominent. We were it is the cornerstone of the resistance to the regime. They have demonstrated remarkable resilience, we have to say, and the fact that the economy is in total ruins and has been for a long time, and we've documented the decline over the years, talking about it to show what was really happening in the country, and yet they survive. And the events of January, with the deaths of tens of thousands of people, has clearly intimidated opposition and certainly public manifestations of the opposition. There are demonstrations. You don't read about them, but there are, especially, in the areas of the minorities and groups. But the Iranian regime itself, despite eliminating the leadership, they keep replacing them. We don't know what quality they are. We don't know exactly who's in charge. It's clearly IRGC that is the dominant force.
We assume that a signed agreement will eventually lead to lower fuel prices. Would that happen with the ceasefire as well, or you don't know?
Yeah, well, it will, because it won't interfere, and it depends on the conditions we establish with it, and do we really make it clear that the straits are open and that there aren't fees and tariffs and things applied to the shippers, and that you have a huge backlog of ships. You see the pictures of them sitting in the water for a long period of time, extended periods. They too can't just forever just sit around and waiting. Right. You're talking about ships with hundreds of millions of dollars worth of oil on them, and if they are released and get back to the market, that will already immediately lower the price. Right. But the real impact will only come if people have confidence that there's a long-term solution here, and I would say that people, because of all of the past history and, not being sure when the president makes contradictory statements day after day, it's a tactic. No, but it could be a tactic on his part. It worked sometimes in the past. He set the red lines down, and if he doesn't reach them, I think that it will have a negative impact in terms of the election, because the opposition, those who are against this, are not going to be more favorable. But people who understood the significance of this could be less. The
funny part is that most politicians try to put some distance between their contradictory statements, as you said, and that was what's funny, is that it could be day to day with him. One day this, the next day completely the opposite. It's America's one and only Jewish Moments in the Morning radio program, heard on listeners-sponsored digital radio. Rather with the web at NachumSegal.com and the Nachum Segal Network, and of course the beloved NSN app. Malcolm Hoenlein with us. Weekly update time. So, how many people that who live in Israel and earn American salaries are furious about what's happening regarding the dollar against the shekel?
Well, it's universal, and I met people who are here for the parade, and others who came from Israel, and my own grandchildren there, and foundations, other things, and the great synagogue, which I'm president, we are suffering greatly because
it's a 25% hit, basically.
It's a 25% hit, and people who wanted to buy apartments or people who are in the process of doing it are being hit very hard. But those who import items and sell them in Israel, these things this affects people day to day in a very serious manner.
Plus tourism.
And of course, the tourism, which is anyway suffering, will now suffer even more because of it. I think a lot of people will go, and there's a lot of pent-up demand to go, and a lot of pent-up demand, I think, for Aliyah. But it certainly will encumber it, and everybody talks about it and says, we have to take steps, and it still goes lower. It goes down to 282. I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable.
To see the strength of the shekel during a war, and that the dollar is so weak in comparison to.
So who is it? I read some story. Was it the Bank of Israel said they're going to intervene, or some other entity was going to intervene and try to do something about it? Like, what can be done at this point?
That's a good question because, the steps that have been taken so far and speeches have been given didn't rectify the situation. That it's less than a year ago when it was 4 to the dollar, right, and then mostly hovering between 3 and 4, but nobody anticipated that it would drop below 3, and certainly not this much below 3. Maybe, it sometimes hovers there and would rebound, but this keeps going down further, and the economic forecast for Israel remains strong despite all the problems and all of the situations in the north and in Gaza, and Israel having to take further actions on both sides to root out the terrorists' infrastructure, that the strength of the dollar, it's a tribute to Bibi for what he did many, many years ago in helping to build the economy. It's a tribute to the high-tech industry, to the people of Israel, to the amazing resilience of the people of Israel. The birth rate doesn't go down. And the projections, I saw yesterday a wonderful presentation by a futurist, Dr. Pasek from Bar Ilan, and he's talking about, the population of Israel going over 20 million in a few decades, much sooner than people anticipated. It's the only country with a positive birth rate in the whole OECD, amongst the developing countries. Wow. Almost none of them have replacement birth rates, which means they'll have no laborers, and either they bring in more foreigners, which continues to distort the countries. And just look at the mosques and the prayers in the streets, and sometimes even outside of a girls' yeshiva, to understand the impact that has.
The Brooklyn people asked you for help on that one, I'm sure.
Well, as chairman of the Flatbush Community Council, I got a lot of calls on it, and certainly our office, people are very concerned. And the fact is that how do they have a right just to do it wherever they want, to block the sidewalks and can you imagine if a group of men went outside a girls' Muslim school or other schools and did the same thing in the streets around it. It would be not tolerated.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right, so now regarding Israel's policy and still associated with the American-Iran situation, it seemed that the President of the United States had essentially laid down the law and declared in whatever fashion this was. In other words, I don't know if it was an official policy or if it was a suggestion or a threat, but he basically wanted Bibi, he wanted the government of the state of Israel to stop activity in Lebanon. That's what it sounded like. And then, of course, Bibi over the last 48 hours has stressed that he's only going to, demand that Israel become stronger and stronger in rooting out the terrorist hubs in Lebanon. So was that the case? Did the President of the United States feel he could only continue negotiating with Iran and those who are negotiating between the two of them if Israel stopped a real threat up in the north?
I don't believe so, and I think he knows it's not realistic. And Israel is not doing an all-out assault. They're doing a lot. They are moving beyond the Litani, and it's amazing to me that no attention is paid to what Israel is finding. That they're finding miles and miles and miles of tunnels, and all the investment in the tunnels. They don't talk about how the people of Lebanon were deprived because all of this money was invested in this instead of developing their industry and developing jobs for them and their own security. That even in interviews with hostile sources like BBC, the people of Lebanon put the onus often on Hezbollah, not on Israel, and say, well, if the attacks would stop. They don't like the attacks. They don't, especially when it comes near Beirut and the movement of populations and the distorted reporting, which is just so beyond belief about what really is happening on the ground. The people want to get rid of Hezbollah, and the idea that you can leave them intact and leave intact the kind of infrastructure that's being discovered virtually every day. But these long 10 kilometers a tunnel, you realize how much work and all the effort, the money that went into this to create that infrastructure. And we know that in every house in southern Lebanon, they had a living room, dining room, and rocket room, and they had placed rockets in all those places, let alone the underground city, that there's a parallel underneath the ground to what's above ground, so they could move around without resistance, without response by Israel. I don't see the government of Lebanon being strengthened. They have made some strong statements, but the question is, can they implement anything to do this? Is the Lebanese army going to be strong enough? They can't on their own get rid of Hezbollah, and that's why if Lebanon and Israel could work together in doing it, it has a much better chance of success. And much more has to be done to make sure that we stop the flow of weapons, whether through Syria, which has largely blocked it and been blocked, or by other means. Clearly, the supply system was remarkable, and the amounts of money involved astonishing to build all of this infrastructure, all the armaments that are being discovered. And now they're using drones, unfortunately, effectively. And a young woman officer was killed yesterday, and virtually every day they kill somebody and they wound others. This is not a tolerable long-term situation. And if you send the wrong signal, if the President of the United States puts the onus on Israel, and by and large he has not, he has put it on Hezbollah, and you notice in regard to Hamas, they've stood by Israel and the actions. Israel does not want to be in control of Gaza in the long term or in take over Lebanon. They have no territorial designs on any of these places. They don't want it, nor on Syria, but they want to have protection. And when you have a regime like you have in Syria, and you can't allow, and also because they're committed to the Druze and to trying to build that zone, it's not because they want the territory. They're not going to build farms there. It's because that is the protection for the population. And if the governments were in control, if it was, the border with Canada, they wouldn't need to do it. So those who ascribe to it, to negative things, and the president's words really matter in this regard, in terms of sending a message to Hezbollah that time is not on your side.
Did you see what percentage of Gaza Bibi claims Israel now controls?
Yes, and I don't know why we have to make statements all the time about it. Just do it, because the numbers are being manipulated by the hostile press and others, and they don't understand that when they say that they took over 10% more, going 60 to 70, it means that yeah, but the populations are there, and that
it's crazy that they're saying it publicly.
Right.
You know what happened? I'll tell you what happened. Until the advent of social media, Bibi abided by the Hoenlein rule. The Hoenlein doctrine was in place in the offices of the Prime Minister of Israel until social media began to explode. And then all of a sudden, as you see from the videos he makes and the stuff that's released on different platforms from his office, you see that they just got into this mode of talking about anything and not understanding how they may regret sharing certain information with the rest of the world. You like my analysis?
I actually agree with your analysis to a large degree, but we have now the overlay of the upcoming election, which means everything is going to be politicized even more, and the opposition speaking out from the right side, actually saying that Israel has not been effective enough in dealing with Hezbollah and Hamas because the population supports the war with Iran, because they don't want to see this thing finish with that's inconclusive. And I'm afraid that could be one of the things, and no one will have confidence. If you were a leader in another country facing the challenge, what would you say? That the West is consistent in its positions and thinking longer term, or everything is short-term response? The president can say and assert that he's not driven by the midterms, and that showed the election results of the past few days to support it. And it might be true in his part, but that's not how the world perceives it.
Yeah. By the way, do they call it the Hoenlein doctrine in Jerusalem as well, or that's exclusively here among us?
I don't let them. I told them it's patented to you, and I have to charge them if they use it.
Trust me, they want to ignore it. They want to make sure to not acknowledge it. But I wish the Prime Minister would change his ways in that area. It drives me crazy. Finally, and this might prove my point, by the way, from earlier in this conversation. Where's the Gaza Board of Peace? It doesn't exist. Okay, it does, on paper, but you got my point. There's no money for it. There's no activity. Again, to prove my point from earlier, the president basically has ignored it, hasn't brought it up in God knows how long, and it just, and it drifts off. There's nobody who expects it to actually be a real entity at this point.
Well, they actually are doing some things, and they're putting out papers, but the...
Am I right that there's no money? That nobody's making a commitment?
The commitments are minimal, and all the people who had big mouths, as when it comes down, it's like a, pledge in the shul when it comes to the time. A lot of people might say,
you've been spending too much time as president in a great synagogue.
Maybe that is true too.
Let's call them out, Malcolm. Right now, let's call out the guys that yell out big amounts and never pay them. Come on, let's do it right now.
They know who they are, and even if you did make a pledge, it's a good idea if you could. If you pay Nachum Segal's radio show,
that's correct. And after you pay last year's pledges, that'd be nice.
But I don't want to write off the Peace Board, because they are doing some stuff, especially on the food and other things. You see the attack now on Israel. I heard it last night from Arluni that the one who's involved with the Palestinian PLO front, that I say, is saying, Israel's providing 1/4. They're providing 4 times what they can use. And I think the Peace Board has tried to rationalize some of these things and is trying to assert itself. There's people that they published several things this week really calling for denazification of population and building the educational systems. And, we just saw the study done of the textbooks in Jordan, where they've made them much worse again. The high school texts, there are some references that are better, but overall, we see that the textbooks remain quite hostile. Some countries did change them and did moderate the anti-Semitic and the really hostile and terrorism-supporting language, but by and large, it's not true of the PA's textbooks, it's not true of others. So at least the Peace Board is in a position to try and present some of the facts. I don't know how credible it is, and I don't know. I'm sure BBC and NPR are not going to be affected by it. I just heard a report where they were talking about the Nova Festival display and saying about how many people were abducted that day, and 19 died.
Oh, my God.
19 died, as if they were murdered, and brutality of it. It's just this constant distortion. So the Peace Board, is it going off on a blast? No, and it's never going to make SpaceX. But it's still, I think, playing a useful role. And if it can expose the lies and distortions, then that would be a useful role too.
You know what you were telling us in the 1990s? Yeah, I mean, you didn't say it like this, although I wish we would have, now that I think about it in retrospect. You were basically saying to us, hey, guys, it's not always going to be like this. We're not always going to be enjoying the support we're enjoying. We're not always going to have the right people, defending us. There's going to be challenging times. And, of course, back then, who would have believed it or who wanted to believe it?
Well, people didn't believe it, and that because they said it was depressing and was, right. To hear these things. But it was obvious, and I'm telling you, the next stages of this are obvious too. If you look at the political rhetoric, if you see the races and some of the people who are in position to get elected, despite whether they have Nazi tattoos and vicious stuff, and have long-standing positions that are beyond belief, and some of them are just irrational candidates. but some of the bad guys lost. But there are too many of them who are passing the initial test from the primaries. Hopefully we'll get defeated in the general elections.
Right.
But we see more and more of these radical voices being accepted.
Enjoy Parade Day. Have a wonderful Shabbos, and we'll speak, please God, next week.
And we have the wonderful proof of Akiva Goldschmidt to look forward to.
Mazal Tov.
Even though the wedding's a couple of weeks, but they were smart and wise in doing it now. So God willing, we'll be there, and then only should have samachot everybody.
Oh, it's one of those offerings a month in advance. Is that what you're telling us?
It's not a month. It's 6 months. No, it's just 2 weeks. But everything is booked. Baruch Hashem, there are so many.
Oh, that's the problem. Excuse me. One second. You, the most connected person on planet Earth, couldn't move mountains to make sure the offer would be days before the wedding. Come on, Malcolm.
This is, first of all, my grandfather, and second of all, the other side, this is their responsibility, and they do it very well. And they are wonderful people.
So they made the final decision.
Yeah, I like the decision. I think it's good because the pressure right before the wedding is much harder.
I know, but Malcolm, we have an opportunity here to really, get some ratings-grabbing controversy going. I mean, come on. Help me out here.
That's the dumbest thing I ever heard.
I mean, come on. Trashing the other side of a wedding, that would be historic. Come on, Malcolm. Anyway, Mazal Tov, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks a lot for that.
Hey, let them know it's only a joke. I beg you, let them know we're kidding around. Malcolm Hoenlein, weekly update. He'll return, please God, a week from today here at JM in the AM. Friday morning, Erev Shabbos, candlelighting at 7:58 in New York. Make sure you know when things start where you are in this Erev Shabbos Parshas Naso. Diaspora is Naso. Israel is Baaloscha. Simple as that. Well, not so simple, but that's the way it is. That's the way it is. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and I'm begging everybody to pay attention for the next minute. Our dear friend Mattis Weingast, who you have heard on the air for the last 45 years, who actually predates me at JM, but that's a story for another day. He has been the most loyal friend, and I'm sure anybody who is of any significant long-time listening in our audience considers him a friend, whether you've met him or not. And those of you who listen to JM Sunday for the last decade, an even closer relationship with Mattis as a listener. Mattis, as we've been telling you, is in a very challenging health situation. Suffered a stroke. His mobility is compromised, and that's an understatement, unfortunately. Those of you out there who are able to give to the GoFundMe campaign to outfit his home for a stroke victim, a stroke survivor, so that we can get him home and get him on the road to recovery. That would be amazing. So there's a GoFundMe page. A lot of people have been very generous so far. We're asking everybody to participate, please. Help out Mattis, help out the family, and let's raise as much as possible. The more we raise, the more that can be done from all the things that need to be done to make his space conducive for somebody in his situation. So, with all that in mind, here are a couple of options. Go to the GoFundMe website and search Weingast, Weingast. Go to the GoFundMe website and search Weingast, Weingast. Or, and this link, by the way, is in the comments section of our app. You can go to bit.ly, that's bit.ly, bit.ly/fundformatis, bit.ly/fundformatis, MATTES. Later today when the daily thread comes out, thank you, Avrami, all this will be included in the daily thread. You'll be able to literally just click on the link in the story and give and contribute. So that's the story. I'm asking this audience to please, 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 please be as generous as you can, and help us help Mattis at this time. Baruch Matidyahu Chaim Ben Batya, Baruch Matidyahu Chaim ben Batya for a refuah shlema. And I thank you for all of this. A lot of very generous people out there, a lot of people who really care about what's happening with Matidyahu at this time. Whatever you could do to help, we greatly appreciate it.